Hi, I'm Jeanette. Let's walk together. I'm down at the riverfront on what we call the Riverwalk in Chicago. Please join me and let's walk together. We might be at about the same rate as these kayakers on the Chicago River. You can't drink the water, but you can swim in it. Well, it's not advised. I mean, it's deep and we don't want people jumping in. But we're at Clark Street. There's a rental boat that's social. Some of the businesses there and people who own boats can have in the marina right there. It's kind of unusual. There aren't a lot of marinas along the river. The Riverwalk was created, I'm going to say 7 years ago, maybe 10 from the time it began. It was a big city project because for so long, over a century, we had ignored the river. But as you can see, as I get closer to Michigan Avenue, the Riverwalk becomes more and more populated. It's divided into several little rooms, sort of, along the river. Walk your bike. And Tiny Tap House has a location here. And they were originally open only part of the year. It may be all year now, I don't really know. Excuse me, there's RPM Seafood. Even the restaurants that used to ignore the river now will face it and recognize the benefit of it. It's a fun thing to do, to kayak. As long as it's on a weekday. Weekends get very, very busy. Don't drop that phone in there. That'd be. So Marina Towers, you can only see one of the towers right now, but we'll see another one as we walk along. It's a great view of the city. Right here. Let's keep going. So during the summer days and weekends, these have been really busy. Spooky season, that's cute. Yeah, they've set up some chairs down right up close to the water too. That's cute. You didn't have a knock the answer over? That's all right. It's really nice to see what the city has been able to create along the river. There are several boats that offer parties on the river. This would be one that you could rent. Could be owned by them. Nice pleasure cruise. He's got to be careful because the big Wendella boat's coming behind a pleasure boat. Another one, the architectural tour boats. From this vantage point, you can see that there are two corncob-looking towers at Marina Towers. There are apartments up top, then parking below, and then lower than that are shops and restaurants. And the idea was for people to come back to live in the city in the 70s when there was, well, they call it white flight. Um, People had left the city for the suburbs. Suburbs were growing, and it helped. Actually, it took some time to get it going, but this is one of the cities in the United States where people do live in the center of the city and work. This is City Winery. These were one of the first restaurants to come over to the Riverwalk. They were very temporary that first year, but it was successful enough that they really made it much more permanent. State Street, State Street Bridge. Okay, let's see what we're looking at here. We're at State Street. Takes a little bit of a turn, and now we're walking between the City Winery sort of room over to the next room. You see the Bridge House Tower. It's my least favorite of them, actually. I prefer the Beaux-Arts style. I think there's more than 80 species of fish now in the river, I was told today. This room has a little more grass and a little bit graded area just for sitting, picnicking. Very wide stairway to come down. We did some photography here one time. The pictures were gorgeous. And from here you can also see, well, there's Trump, but also the Wrigley Building and closer to Michigan Avenue, which is the premier street to cross the river. Yes. A memorial fountain for soldiers, I'm pretty sure. Chicago Brew House.
tell us now that we're done. Not right away.
The Langham Hotel is in this building. It was a postmodern building. And Langham has gone in there pretty recently. It's one of the top hotels in the country. This is a space that used to be owned by the Sun-Times newspaper. Uh, these days it's the location for Trump Tower. Very tall. This room of the Riverwalk is O'Brien's, another restaurant. It says Riverwalk on the sign there. Another pleasure boat and a couple more two boats. This is a fairly new part of the Riverwalk. It's called the Marketplace. I believe it's also seasonal, but they have been doing seasonal boutiques. Hi. Gorgeous things done by locals. And it's a little bit separate. Hi. So you can see they've taken what was just blank space and made it boutique food, not with the money behind it that those fancy restaurants have. Vegan noms. Across the way is where the Wendella boats load and unload. And just behind the Wrigley building, which is one of the old classic fabulous buildings from the 1920s. And it is across Michigan Avenue from the Tribune Tower. Chicago Tribune's offices were in there for, I think more than a century. But in the last few years it was sold, and it's condos. Yes, there was a contest to choose about the architecture of the Tribune Tower. There goes a water taxi and Chicago's Emerald Lady to Chicago. They have a nice day for doing the different architectural tours. This is the Bridge House Museum, and it's a museum inside this bridge house. It's a wonderful little museum. It's very small because it really does just fit in there. Great views of the river through those windows. Also good views of the bridge, Michigan or DuSable Bridge. It's also Michigan Avenue, and it's got an upper half and a lower half. Upper for traffic and pedestrians, lower as well. It gets really, really busy, but it also has to be lifted when the boats come by if they've got the high masts. Bridge House Museum is one of my favorite places. They have a good point. Before there was a city, there was a river. Hello, how are you?
Thanks. Welcome to the Bridge House Museum.
Thanks, I've gone through several times. I love it. But I was going to ask how long you're open for the season.
So we are open through the end of October.
Okay.
We might be open the first weekend of November.
Okay, depending on weather or something.
It's mostly weather
Okay.
dependent. If it's
Boy, it's
really
amazing
nasty,
now.
really cold, it's
Yeah.
not worth it to have it open. But if we have some nice days,
Good.
So yeah, we'll post about it on our social media.
All right.
So we have a sense of it.
Thanks. I'll be back next summer too. Thanks. I even have one of the little pins, in the shape of the tower. Love it. Thanks. Have a good one. Science station. A lot more animals are also living around the river besides fish. 80 species of fish, but also um, beavers, muskrats, squirrels, eagles, some bald eagles, some hawks, and sort of the usual crowd that you would expect to find more in the country. Oh, coyotes, there's a lot of coyotes. We sometimes get coyotes in the river or the lake as well. They do come to the city. Okay, we're under another one of the bridges. This is, again, the DuSable Michigan Avenue Bridge. DuSable was the first permanent settler of this area who was of European. I think he was actually from Haiti, but I could be mixing him up with. And he did settle. I think he's the one who settled on Wolf Point, that point where we just started. The bridge house, here's a better view of the Wrigley Tower and the Tribune Tower. And across the way, the flat glass thing is the Apple store, Apple computer, and NBC Tower, Lowe's, Sheraton, hotels, etc. This room along the riverfront is Chicago's First Lady and Mercury Cruises. That is where the Chicago Architecture Center, which is right up above it, keeps their boats, which are out along here. I have been a volunteer over there, so I'm a little bit prefer them. They know what they're doing. They're not just there to make jokes and get tips. In fact, the docents who lead the tours along the river study very much. And architecturecruise.com is where you can find the times and prices for the official Chicago Architecture Center architecture tours. It is such an easy way to see the city and the history kind of condensed, and you're pretty much just sitting there. When my sister was not well, couldn't walk well, she could do an architecture cruise and absolutely loved it. And if you've done them before, but it's been 10 years, come back. So much changes all the time. So many new buildings, new information. I mean, the whole Riverwalk wasn't even going 10 years ago. They get good crowds. And I've actually sat through it on beautiful days, but also pouring rain. In fact, I'm not sure I was ever more soaked through than when I had friends visiting and we did an architecture cruise, but it was pouring. Oh man, was it pouring. So this is Lower Wacker Drive, part of it, and sort of a parking lot section. Most of the city from here is on stilts. There's a lot of cities that way, but Lower Wacker Drive is an idea to keep traffic from being quite so congested up above. I don't love going down there in a taxi or an Uber. Not my favorite. had an Uber get lost on Lower Wacker Drive before, but it does keep Upper Wacker Drive somewhat less busy. And another dock for another cruise. This is newer within the last 5 years. It's cute, 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 cute. The van at Northman. And they've got nice tables set out. I mean, it's really delightful that they've been able to use the Riverwalk for so much. And people, I mean, this is October, and it's still a really nice place. In fact, now that we're at Columbus Drive, I think I'll stop and maybe have a beer. And walk over to the corner here.